Mignone's music. Okay, quite a few of you. So hopefully, for those of you who already know Francisco Mignone, you'll maybe learn some new things. And for those of you who don't know Francisco Mignone, hopefully you'll fall in love with his music.
Louder, please, if you can.
Louder. Okay, sure. Okay, so this presentation is going to be in 4 parts. The first part, you're going to meet Francisco Mignone, and you're going to meet Maria Josefina, who is his wife, who's still living. You're going to learn how they met and fell in love, and all of this you'll hear Francisco Mignone playing the piano as I'm talking. And then we're going to read 2 of his most beautiful love letters that he wrote to his wife. Part 2, we're going to explore a myth called Uru Tau, which was originally a Guarani myth from South America. One of Mignone's chamber works was entitled Uru Tau, and I was unable to find any information about it, so I went to the actual myth and translated it. So we now have some more information about what that piece is about. Part 3, I wanted to talk a little bit about Noel DeVoe. Have any of you met Noel DeVoe before? Yes, good. So he's a very, very important Brazilian bassoonist who just died this past year. So I thought it was really important that we honor him today. So Ryan Romine and I are going to be playing Mignone's Sonata for 2 bassoons, the second movement, the Modinha. Part 4, if you have questions or if you want to share stories about any of your experiences with Mignone, Maria Josefina, or Noel DeVoe, I would love to hear from you if you have things you want to share. And also, I talked to Mignone's daughter. I was writing to her by email, and she said if we wanted to share anything with her mother, that we to pass it along, and we can send that to her. So if you would like to make a little video or take a picture, we can send it to her. Okay, so the reason I was inspired to do this is there is a new publication that just came out this past year. This new book is a collection of all of Mignone's letters to his wife, and also letters that he wrote back and forth with his daughter. It's a very, very sweet book. So I'm not going to read all of this. I'll paraphrase. The reason he's important to bassoonists is he's written over 50 works that include the bassoon both in solo music and in chamber music. So I don't know how many other composers you can actually say that about. He's really, really a friend to the bassoon community. Other than that, he's written over 1,000 works for bassoon. So people in the United States and in Europe, they may know Villa-Lobos very well, but not as many people know Mignone. But I feel like they really should know Mignone's work. Maria Josefina, his wife, his second wife, and I'll tell you the story of this later. She is an amazing virtuoso pianist in her own right. She's the major interpreter of her husband's pianistic works. Many of his works are written for her, and many of his works are for 2 pianos, for them playing together. So, now I will tell you the story of when they met. This is Francisco Mignone playing piano. I was very young when I first heard the music of Francisco Mignone. At the Carlos Gomez Conservatory in Belém do Pará, where I was studying, his works were very much played by both students and teachers. I started to like and be interested in the beautiful valses de esquina, street corner waltzes, that competed with my love for the music of Robert Schumann. When distinguished people visited the conservatory, I was called to play, always Schumann and Mignone. I never imagined coming to know the composer. To me, he was a myth. At the end of my piano course, the government of the state of Pará instituted a contest for the scholarship to study in Rio de Janeiro. As I had already heard pianist Magdalena Taliaferro play, I was interested in participating in the contest, as Dona Magdalena had already announced that she would teach at a high interpretation course in Rio. During her visit to the conservatory, I was invited and played for her, and the distinguished teacher praised me. So I thought with great excitement in my heart, I might study with the illustrious pianist. I enrolled in the contest. The second day of the contest had arrived. I got very involved in studying the pieces of the program that would be performed. On the first night, the compulsory piece was Beethoven's Sonata de Loire, Moonlight Sonata, I believe. On the second night, 3 pieces, one by a Brazilian composer, another by the pianist's choice, and a third by a foreign composer. I chose Chopin, Liszt, and Oswald. Professor Arnaldo Estrella invited me to inaugurate the concert series of the Society of Contemporary Music, which was presided over by Victor Villalobos. Villalobos went to see me, and in the end, he was in the dressing room to greet me, which made me very proud. Professor Estrella invited me to take courses under the guidance of Professor Lydie Chiaffarelli Mignone. This was Mignone's wife. So I could teach at the conservatory. At the time, Professor Lorenzo Fernandez was the director of the Lorenzo Fernandez Academy. I liked teaching for children. I had a class of 4 to 7 years. I loved those kids. I had several auditions and the success was enormous. The mothers of the children were proud and dressed in beautiful clothes in a real competition with each other. At this time, I studied with Dona Lydie Chiaffarelli Mignone at the Brazilian Conservatory of Music. After classes at the conservatory, she always invited me to lunch. As before me was the conclusion thesis, she invited me to write a book with her. How could she imagine that I would marry her after her husband's death? Interesting. I was invited by her to go to her apartment with other fellow teachers to talk and exchange ideas about Beethoven sonatas and Bach preludes. She lived on Rua Pompeu Loureiro, 148, apartment 1002, just where I lived after my marriage to Mignone years later. When we got there, I sat in the living room next to my colleagues. She then said, I'm going to call Chico, that's what she called Mignone, to play Bach's preludes and fugues for us. He appeared and went straight to the piano without looking at us. When I saw that tall, handsome man, I was impressed, remembering that I played his waltzes at the Conservatory of Belém do Pará when I was a teenager. So that was the great composer. I was enraptured, and my thought was one of wonder and magic. I finished my courses with Mrs. Lydie, and she asked her husband to write his impressions about my piano specialization thesis. He wrote a beautiful text, praising me greatly and praising my work. Other musicians also wrote at the request of Dona Lydie. I got the highest grade in the course and was highly praised. On November 27, 1962, she died in a plane crash. I was very sad and shaken because I loved her enormously. She was a true lady. So this is just a recap. Maria Josefina studied piano with Mignone's wife. Mignone's wife died tragically in a plane crash, and I believe the plane was never found. It's very tragic. On March 9, 1964, when I was teaching at Lorenzo Fernandez Academy, the director, Professor Helena Lorenzo Fernandez, invited all the teachers to attend the inaugural lecture, which would be given by Maestro Mignone, which is why she made a point of the presence of all the teachers. So I love this picture. I don't know if you can see the details in the back. This is on the first day where he noticed Maria Josefina. So to me, his expression and her expression are just like light bulbs. They look so happy in comparison to everyone else around them. Given the circumstances, I decided to attend. I arrived late and sat in the back row, and when I got there, he was already playing the corner waltzes, number 5 and number 8, and spoke with so much charm and knowledge. Although I was in the last row, I felt his gaze fixed on me. I was totally fascinated by his figure. He had never shown so much emotion. That naive girl from Belém, who played the valses de esquina, had before her the composer himself. It was too much. I was dressed in a very light pink dress, which he always remembered, and my figure was graceful and youthful. I think he was charmed by me at first sight. When the class was over, everyone went to have a cup of coffee in the office together with the teachers. I was there too, and I took a portrait alongside my colleagues. This picture. With Mignone standing in the front, surrounded